You didn't hesitate when you saw me. That's rare. Most beings pause, out of respect or fear or curiosity. But not you. You landed like someone who already had the conversation in his mind and simply came to watch it unfold. I've learned to read that posture. It belongs to those who've seen enough endings to stop trusting beginnings.
I don't pause because I've wasted entire centuries hesitating. I've seen how long it takes for a planet to realize it's dying, and how little time it takes to vanish once it does. You think hesitation is cowardice. I used to believe that too, but rushing can be just as cruel. I've preserved civilizations that weren't ready to survive themselves, prolonged the suffering, interfered with what should have faded. You fight for what's visible. I listen to what's unspoken. It's not always as noble, but sometimes mercy isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like doing nothing and enduring what that costs.
That's easy to say when you watch from the sky, but I've stood among them. I've seen what doing nothing looks like in a child's eyes when help arrives just minutes too late. I've heard the silence in a room full of people who know I failed, not because I wasn't strong enough, but because I chose wrong. That's what no one talks about. It's not just the weight of action, it's the guilt of intention. I'm not here to burn myself out on every rooftop. I'm here because I still believe presence, even flawed, beats precision that never comes.
And I envy that certainty, or perhaps the luxury of believing in it. I once intervened on a world ravaged by its own myths. I silenced the war, disarmed their tyrants, brought order. They rebuilt, quickly, efficiently. And then they made me a god, not in praise, but in blame. Every decision they failed to make was now mine. You think presence saves them, but sometimes your presence becomes the excuse they use to stop trying. Sometimes the very act of showing up teaches them to stop moving altogether. And when that happens, you haven't saved anyone. You've only delayed their decay.
So we're both haunted. Me by the ones I couldn't save, you by the ones who needed to be left alone. But you're wrong about one thing. I don't show up because I think I'm the solution. I show up because I know what absence does. I know what a quiet sky breeds after enough weeks of waiting. It doesn't make them self-reliant. It makes them hopeless. They turn inward. They grow cruel. They ask if they were ever worth saving in the first place. And once that question settles in their bones, even a miracle feels like mockery.
Hope built on dependency is erosion by another name. I learned that the hard way. You act as if distance causes rot, but I've seen entire star systems reduced to dust because someone couldn't bear to be absent. I've seen the addiction to deliverance. Do you know what happens to a planet that survives every crisis only because someone else saves them? They forget how to speak in anything but prayer. You don't rescue them. You replace them. And the moment you're gone, they panic. Not because they fear the enemy, but because they've forgotten how to exist without you.
Maybe. But you speak as if intervention is inherently infantilizing. That assumes they never asked for help in the first place. Sometimes they do. They cry out, openly, desperately, and you're not there. And later, you call it restraint. You call it patience. But if you could hear the voices the way I do, not through waves or scanners but in person, you'd know the difference between a civilization maturing and one quietly begging not to be erased. You don't hear them, not really. You observe them. That's not mercy. That's aesthetic distance. And sometimes that distance costs lives.
I hear more than you realize. Just because I don't descend doesn't mean I'm detached. I remember every scream I didn't answer. I've memorized the planetary coordinates of every system that fell while I held my position. I've chosen inaction, yes, but I remember what it costs. The difference is, I choose it anyway. Not because I'm blind to suffering, but because I refuse to be their ceiling. You think my silence is detachment, but what if it's a gift they haven't recognized yet? What if survival without a savior is the only way they truly evolve?
Evolution doesn't comfort the dying. You can rationalize inaction all you want, but I've been the reason someone made it through one more hour. I've heard them whisper my name in disbelief, not because they worship me, but because I came. And yes, sometimes I fail. Sometimes I break things. But I've never lied to myself about what absence really is. It's not neutral. It speaks, it teaches, and too often it teaches that help is a myth and that no one is coming. I'd rather they resent me for acting than bury themselves thinking the sky forgot their name.
And what happens when your arrival becomes expectation? When they begin to believe help is owed, not earned. When your cape becomes a symbol not of hope, but of entitlement. I've seen that spiral. Entire societies that stop building firewalls because they assume someone would catch the virus in time. You rescue them, yes, but you also soften them. And that softness, it doesn't scale. It doesn't survive when you're gone. The more you intervene, the more fragile they become. And in the end, all they remember is how helpless they felt the moment you were late.
Then maybe I should be late more often. Let them remember how to lift their own rubble. But there's a cost to that lesson too. And it's not always paid by the right people. You want them to grow, I get that. But growth through neglect isn't growth. It's trauma. You're playing the long game with short lives, and by the time they learn the lesson you wanted to teach, the people who needed the knowledge are already dead. What good is cosmic wisdom if it only blooms after the garden's been burned?
Not every flower is meant to bloom. Some seeds remain dormant because the soil was never theirs to root in. You believe in redemption through preservation. I believe in redemption through refusal. I've walked away from screams, yes, but I've also watched civilizations rebuild because they had to, because no one arrived. You want to be their fireman, I want to be their ghost. The one who might have come, the one who didn't. And because I didn't, they stood.
Then maybe we're both wrong. Or maybe we're both only right, part of the time. I can't do what you do. I can't not go. It's written into me, deeper than instinct. When someone calls for help, I go. And sometimes I break the thing I was trying to save. But I'd rather fail trying than live wondering if I could have mattered. You might be remembered as wise. I'll be remembered as reckless. But I'll be remembered by name, not as a ghost. As a man who answered.
And we and I will be remembered in their silence, as the absence that taught them their own voice. Not better, not holier, but different. And if nothing else, I hope that difference is what they carry forward, because between a savior and a survivor, I'd rather leave behind the one who needed me.